All right, and we are live. Not starting soon. We are started. We have started. It is now in the past tense. Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another awesome stream of Mission Briefing. Very excited for today. Hey, Patrick PY already in the chat. How's it going? Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm very excited for today. We're going to be taking a different turn, so we haven't really looked at anything coming out of Graph Manager, which, if people aren't familiar, I'll save that for our awesome guest here, who I'm going to introduce in a second to kind of go through. But yeah, I'm very excited about this because I actually haven't used Graph Manager in a little while. So I'm very excited to see what we've got going on. And today we're going to be talking about schema reporting. And I won't get too deep into it because, again, I feel like Adam, our guest, Adam Zients is here, and he's going to walk us through essentially what we're going to talk about today. Adam, you want to kind of take it from there?
Sure thing. Thank you, Kurt. Also, I was
Cool.
thinking that one thing that we could do for mission briefing in the future is to have one of those ship launching countdowns and then have liftoff happen.
Oh,
10,
why did you
9,
do that? That's
8.
amazing. That's so good. Oh, yes. Yes, we're going to do
Yeah.
that. That's funny.
Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Adam. I work on the team. I lead the team that works on Graph Manager. And one of the things that we've been working on for the last couple months, actually, or at least several weeks, has been setting up the ability for servers to report their schemas to Graph Manager and keep track of that history. Um, and it's one of those incredibly useful tools we've found internally. A lot of Graph Manager actually came out of tools that we internally, when managing our own graph, have found useful for ourselves.
Yeah.
And the ability to just share which graph is running where, whether that's staging, production, or just push to the master branch. Um, and feedback that we got from a lot of users that were setting this up is that it was really useful to have this line item of history saying which changes happened when and what's actually available in each environment. But it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to set up. I don't know if people are on the call who've used the Apollo CLI tool. It's super powerful, but it can be challenging to get integrated with it. And as well, you need to make changes to your deployment infrastructure to make sure that that always goes through and it's running. And you have to think through edge case handling and error handling in the deployment. And we wanted to make that experience a lot better for people who just wanted to get started tracking that schema history and
Yeah.
being able to get notified on changes and stuff. And that's what schema reporting is all about. Schema
Uh,
reporting is about just embedding the ability for your server to report its own schema as it's running to Graph Manager to keep track of that history so that the burden of setting that up is not on you as the developer.
Got it. Got it. So real quick, before we get further into that, let's just to play, let's say like, new to Apollo advocate. What is Graph Manager? Like, what is that?
That's a great question. So Graph Manager is a home for your graph, first and foremost. The ability to see, so in this example, I just set up a kind of fake one, but let me go to the Acephi graph and show that one off, which you can all
Yeah,
access as well at demo.apollo.dev. Um,
I will drop that in the link. That's demo.apollo.dev.
that it is, though it's taking some time to load, so maybe I'll just go to the direct link. It is this, I believe. Looks like something is wrong with some DNS mapping here. Who
Yeah,
knows?
that's interesting. Yeah, well, I dropped it in the chat. We'll see. Later on, I can always drop the other link if we need to. One question. Could you
Mhm.
possibly blow up the Chrome, just magnify it maybe one or two more times?
How
Just
about
so,
that?
there we go. That's good. Yeah, yeah.
All
This should
right.
be more visible for everyone.
So,
Yeah, awesome.
so yeah, Graph Manager is basically a hub for where your graph lives, how you communicate with your team about which fields are available on the root query type, for instance, or how you understand the usage. For instance, these fields that aren't used at all, where there's no
Wow,
usage
yeah.
in the last day, being able to go in there and say, wow, maybe these should be deprecated. And then
Yeah,
you can see in the deprecations tab, which fields are here, and this field is deprecated, but it actually has a lot of requests in the last day. Clearly, there's something
interesting.
wrong with that when it's being told that we should use products instead.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of get a good understanding of what that usage pattern is, be able to share the graph with your team. You can actually have different variants as well. So in the Asafi example, there's the production, what's actually running on production, but there's also things that are in development. So if you wanted to point your local development client at the development graph, you could start to pull in schema changes and collaborate even before changes hit production.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And as well, well, I guess there's no client tracking set up in Asafi, but you can imagine this being populated by native clients and web clients, being able to see iOS traffic, Android traffic, and differentiate between them and kind of have that nice hub there.
Yeah, yeah.
Since this is a demo, there's not as much kind of going on at first glance of it, but essentially the idea is to be able to understand how to explore your schema, see what's available, to understand usage of it, and be able to inform users as things change. So like maybe you're deprecating a field, you're like, I wonder which clients and operations are actually using that field. You can
will
reach
be
out
affected. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, for instance, here's an example where this has usage in the last day. If we wanted to change the me field in some way, we'd have to look into these 4 operations, maybe reach out to the team developing the iOS client or the web client.
Right.
So that's it in a nutshell, being able to collaborate, get notifications on your schema changes, things like that.
Yeah, this is really wild. And so I imagine under metrics, like this would be things like resolver times, like how long it's taking resolvers to return and stuff. Okay, so now that we're on production, we have metrics. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah, we just didn't have them on the development branch because that I think in Asafi represents an actual like GitHub branch that someone is working on, not actually running anywhere.
Got it.
And that's kind of that point of being able to do that early collaboration, right? You can have things that aren't quite running anywhere, or maybe are even just running on my local machine, like I'll demo today, and be able to track those schemas and share them with, someone else on your team or someone who's making a related product that might benefit from the new fields and types that you're setting up.
For sure. Yeah, this is cool. Okay.
And actually, for those people who are familiar with the metric side of Graph Manager, what I'm going to show today is actually something that's going to be super, super easy for them to set up because there's actually no real changes required. Where to set up operation tracking, all you really need is one API key that you embed in your server's runtime, and schema reporting works the same way. Essentially, the idea is that as your server is running and getting operations, it tracks each one of those operations, and you can see a detailed representation of how it's executing every single field. And the idea of schema reporting is it uses that same infrastructure that's reporting those metrics to consume that same API key and say, okay, we're just going to add one more thing for report. We're going to report the schema information so that you have the ability to see how your schema is changing over time without needing to do any configuration.
Do anything. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, awesome. Very cool. All right, getting the hype, building the hype. I'm loving it.
Hype.
Nice.
And iOS Top Products has no errors. Maybe it does in the last one. Nope, iOS Top Products is error-free. Beautiful.
Look at that. Yeah, that's great. That's what we want, right?
Yeah, I love these graphs. Sometimes I find myself just like clicking around on this page to see graphs.
They're so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always a big fan of like nice looking data visualizations,
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, so this is really cool. So I'm just taking a look at some of this stuff, and I'm very interested. So I guess so we've kind of gone over what schema reporting is, and we've talked about what Graph Manager is, and I think that's enough to kind of catch everyone up to speed in case anybody wasn't there. So so what are we going to be doing today when it comes to relation to schema reporting? What did you have in mind?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to preview what we've built. We're not at a whole production release yet, but we actually do have end-to-end functionality working. This is something that everyone on the stream today could set up and play with. We would love to hear feedback of if it is as easy to set up as we want it to be, if it actually tracks your schema the way that you want it to. That is it's something that we really want to make sure we get right before changing any kind of default behavior of Apollo server.
That makes sense.
I wanted to do just like a quick walkthrough of setting it up. I actually just like logged onto our docs and like did a whole bunch of copy paste to get the example server that exists. So those of you who like gone through the tutorial will recognize the book and query for
Yeah.
all books. And I figured we could just run the server, make some schema changes, show how that just appears in Graph Manager in the History tab, and we can
Yeah.
just kind of take it from there.
Awesome. I love it. Let's do it. I'm excited.
Awesome.
And this is
So,
also fun for me because I'm used to being the one doing most of the steering, but now I just get to sit back and harass you with questions. So I can't
oh
wait.
boy. Well, you're gonna have to be patient with me. I already shared this with Kurt, but I am not a VS Code expert for sure, and I'm a little rusty on JavaScript land. Most of our backend, for those of you who don't know, in on the Graph Manager side, is actually written in Kotlin.
Yeah,
Um,
which is cool. It's been on my list to learn Kotlin for a long
uh,
time. Yeah.
it's a it kind of has this long on ramp of a language because it's so feature rich. Like
Yeah.
every single like string has like 1,000 extension functions on it, but it's really powerful. And when you get used to the syntax, it also reads really cleanly and is pretty concise.
Nice.
Uh, anyway, not to go off on that tangent because I can.
Hey,
I'll just
no
talk a little bit
worries.
about it.
Yeah, all tangents are welcome on this stream. Honestly, that's what we love.
Yeah, so if you go to the like introduction to Apollo server docs, you could set up the exact same tutorial once you click this get started button. I literally just clicked copy paste and put them all in here, so it saved you the effort. I actually didn't find a repo with just that, which was kind of surprising, but it wasn't so hard to copy and command
Um,
V a whole bunch.
can you
Um,
jump back real quick just to that docs page real quick? Because I'm just copying the URL and putting that into the
sure,
chat real quick.
it
Doc
is,
slash Apollo server. Right.
and no
I
my
actually knew
location.
that. I got it. Boom.
Alrighty.
Done. Thank you.
So yeah, I just copied all of that stuff in here. I have a server. I set up a run script that just, or a start script that just
Starts it.
loads next.js.
Okay.
I think in here I shift escape to, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
npm run start. Oh, command K doesn't work in here. So now I have a server ready at localhost 4000. I can query against it. I added one thing in here, which was, in stock. I just said everything is in stock. So
Yeah.
actually
Can we
that draft
do sorry,
stock.
real quick. Can we do the same thing and blow up the playground? Just make that a bit larger.
You got it. That
Boom.
good?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, and right now, this actually isn't running with with any kind of API key, so we're not going to get those metrics. We're not going to get that
No,
schema or
yeah.
anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab one of those, and I'll delete these afterwards in a moment. Though, if
Right.
someone wants to futz with my graph while I'm doing this stream, power to you.
Yeah.
Um, just copying this
Be
token here.
responsible stream attendees all, please. No futzing. It's a futz free zone.
So if I just say Apollo key as environment variable and paste that one in there,
Oh,
um,
cool.
I can restart the server. I don't know how NodeMon works, so I didn't bother. Um,
Yeah. It's actually relatively easy, not to derail us either, but it's pretty cool. You just do like nodemon and then like what the command is, or like the file, I think. So instead of like for your start, instead of saying like node index.js, I think it's just
but
nodemon. But I
even
think you have to install nodemon. So
that's kind of why I
yeah,
didn't do
don't
it.
worry about it. I wouldn't worry about
Right,
it.
taking off those 3 letters.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, now we still have this up and running, and we can make a new operation name here, like hello, we are streaming,
Yeah.
and run that a couple of times. And after a few seconds of processing time, oh, actually, I think that was the wrong one. I think we want to go back to this graph. We should start to see some metrics appearing that have our new operation in there.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, look at that.
so look, we have this one. Hello, we are streaming. There are a couple of operations that have shown up. But now let's go ahead
So
and make,
fast.
yeah,
Yeah, so
quick.
real quick, all
Mhm.
you did was add a key. So what that tells me is like there's Apollo server just knows like, oh hey, I see a key. There's a key here. So now I'm gonna start sending metrics and just reporting
That's
that to
right.
Graph Manager. That's the onboarding for Graph Manager is to just
That's
have a key?
that's right. The entire onboarding is just to have this key.
That is a wild.
Well, hold on. So that's the onboarding for metrics. However, right now, the onboarding for being able to report your schema is you need to install the CLI, you have to set up a configuration file, and you have to publish your
Right.
schema either via a file or via introspection to your server. And there were a couple of reasons that we wanted to make that experience better.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
of
for
them
sure.
is a lot of users actually don't just have a file with all of their schema in it already.
Yeah.
Two is you want to be able to track your schema whenever it changes, but you don't want to have to do that manually and like have to remember when it changes, I do a thing. And three, introspection is actually lossy. Like there's really valuable information in your schema around like what directives are on fields or types, and it's even
Oh.
comments as well that you really want to preserve. And that's something that you lose in introspection, as well as the fact that field ordering can matter, right? Like the way that
Yeah.
you organize your fields really can matter. And a
Yeah.
lot of introspection results don't maintain
Don't.
that.
Wow. See, I didn't know any of that. And you're right though, but I mean directives don't show up. That I knew. But like yeah, that's important information that you would want. Especially like I'm thinking of like auth use cases and stuff if you're doing some kind of like auth directive or like really anything. But yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. So we wanted to make that not only a lot easier to set up, because what knows when your schema changes? Your server always knows. There's
Always
something
knows.
automatic about it.
Yeah.
So being able to know when your schema changes shouldn't have to be this manual process. It shouldn't have to be integrations in your deployment pipeline. It should be something about, should be a property of your running server.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, of course, there's the use case I mentioned before as well, of being able to track a schema that you're not actually running. And for that, of course, you can still use the CLI. There's nothing changing there. This is only something that we're adding in so that you don't need to go through that rigmarole in your deployment pipeline for a running server.
Got it.
Yeah, but that's also something that could easily be accomplished just by running it locally, like I'm going to show today.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's all it is. To set up metrics reporting, all it is setting up an Apollo key. Now, because we're still in preview, we actually have a set of preview docs that we put together for like how to enable this.
Okay.
It's here in the Apollo schema reporting preview docs, aptly named in Apollo GraphQL.
Can you just like either Slack me or Skype me that link, and then I'll drop it in the chat for everyone.
I just did.
Cool. Thank you.
And so this will tell you how to get set up. The way that I would recommend or actually the way to get set up right now is you add one configuration option into Apollo server under the engine, which is our deprecated name, but that's okay. Backwards compatibility being what it is.
Yeah.
And set this experimental schema reporting option in there to just be true. And that's all you need to opt in. And then the moment that I start serving this, you'll see, well, actually, you won't see anything immediately because what we have in there is already registered. But what we can do is make a schema change and see that show up.
That's cool.
So in this case, I've added a score as an integer. So I can add a score to a book, int, and that one should just appear automatically because it's one of the default resolvers. And then I can go ahead and stop that server that I just started to run, start it up
again.
And after a little bit of lead time, we should see that start to appear in history and see that change come in. Now, one thing that's actually kind of interesting just about the fact of how this works today, different from metrics. So metrics, we saw that come in immediately, right? We ran some operations, and as soon as it went through the process pipeline, it was 20 seconds maybe, and it had appeared.
Yeah.
Schema changes are going to take a little bit more time, and that's to accommodate the fact that you might have multiple servers running. And so just one of them reporting that it's changed isn't enough to trigger that actual rollover. If you want to learn more about how that algorithm works and how it populates those changes, it's actually detailed here for those who are curious in these preview docs. So we anticipate maybe making some changes to that to accommodate whatever needs there are.
Right.
So let's go ahead and see. So this still has not appeared. I wonder why. Feels like it should appear by now, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe we try another refresh now and it'll be there.
No. I think
there it is.
Yep, score.
It just appeared.
So it takes a little longer than I guess I wanted, but especially for the use case of running in production or running in staging, waiting an extra minute or so just for that added level of safety.
That's nothing. And this is really cool. So it's even telling you like it's a non-breaking change.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me be quiet. Why don't you go into what it's going to tell us? I've never seen it
No,
before.
no. So you're exactly right. We can look at a previous change that was made, and we'll notice that just checking some stuff was broken
Yeah.
because we removed a field that I had previously added, which I'll actually add
Ah,
back in now. But it'll tell you everything. So this example, we added a field. It's fairly
yeah.
straightforward. We can try to do something a little bit more complex, and see that it picks that up as well. Of course. For instance, we can deprecate the author field, use author name instead, because really this is a string, so you would expect author to be some kind of
Being,
user.
yeah, like a entity, a whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And let's say that the author name is actually required um, as well, so let's make two different changes there.
Yeah.
And we'll have to add a resolver for that. So uh,
For,
author name, parent dot author, because that's what we actually called it on the thing.
yep.
Uh, and I forgot a colon, so
Yeah,
that's
there you
probably
go.
what that.
Your VS Code foo seems pretty good. I mean, I gotta say, you gave us all these warnings, and it looks like you're flying through there. I hate to see what it looks like when you're comfortable in your IDE and you're in Kotlin. It's like a million characters a minute.
I don't know about that. Oh, so this actually won't appear yet because Playground is going to do some strange caching stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it has to be
So
refreshed. Yeah, I got it.
page, and now we have some usage of author name, and hopefully we should see. Oops, I'm just going to exit out of that so I don't keep going over there. And we should see that appear in here in a minute. And we don't actually just have to sit around here refreshing the history page for things to come up.
Right.
We can also set up schema notifications to get notified on changes.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that because this is something I'm extremely interested in, and
Yeah.
it was recently released, if I remember correctly, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So yeah,
Yeah, so this is something that has recently come out. You can set up any, we have ZZ Sashko notifications test set up. You can set up any Slack channel to report to. So I could even opt for a new channel. Uh, and let's call it Kurt Direct. And we're just going to send it to you, Kurt.
oh yeah, I
Uh,
love it.
and we got to see the docs to figure out how to get that. Maybe I should not share my screen when I go over here, though, is the one thing.
Yeah, if you need to, you could definitely pull that off of screen, or I can uh, hide your screen share. You can let me know if you need me to do any of that.
I think this should. I'm trying to like. I don't think that
I
it's
don't
a
think it
bad thing.
shows anything. Yeah,
Like, so let's see. I can just send this directly to you, and I think that should work.
yeah. And there's our URL. So I mean, someone could get crazy with it, but we can also just delete this afterwards as well.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
probably should.
Yeah.
So I'll just send that to you, and then when the schema changes, and I'll. So one thing I didn't go over is the idea of variance.
Yeah.
But actually, right now we're reporting our schema directly and our metrics directly to the current variant. That's the default. But if we wanted to change this to, Zion's dev, we could, of course, do that as well. But I'll just set it up for current right now. That's all we have. And that means that as schema changes happen, they'll actually be sent directly to you, and you'll get a notification in Slack.
This is
And we
awesome.
have this, yeah, we have this set up internally on like a company-wide channel, so everyone can see just the changes that are happening to the schema. And it's super useful to understand in production changes that are landing so that we can start using them. And there is some kind of econ
Yeah.
reset. That's not good.
Yay. So I've already got a test message, so I just brought it over on the screen so that everyone could see it. So it's already test message from Apollo for Kurt Direct. Um, and so that's what I'll do. Just when a message comes in, I'll go ahead and screenshot it and bring it over so that everyone else can see it as well.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Something
awesome.
happened. Okay, but sorry, now that we've stalled long enough, we can see that our changes, the author field on the book object has been deprecated, and we can see some documentation for why. We don't have
Yeah,
the
that's
reasoning
cool.
right now, but
Yeah.
uh, and then we see that author name was added, and we can go ahead and make another change. I think I added a different. Let me go ahead and turn that one off. I think I added a different one in here called score. Who knows what
Yes.
score means? Oh no, score we already added. In
Yeah,
stock we
score we
already
have.
added. Let's go ahead and just remove those two
Why not?
because we decided we actually don't need them. Even though the data is there, we didn't have any use cases for them, and we could actually even check that over on the Explorer page and say, there was no usage of score. Actually, there was usage of in stock. So let's go ahead and not remove in stock. Let's only remove score
I love it.
because we don't want things cluttering our schema when we're not using them.
Yeah.
And let's go ahead and start that back up again. And after there's enough lead time between the servers running, Graph Manager should pick up that a new schema has come in and there hasn't been a sign of the old schema for some time, so it's going to roll over into that new use case.
Oops.
Yeah. And you'll notice that all of this was happening even though we weren't making operations against the schema. So unlike metrics reporting that relies on operations constantly coming in against the schema, this is something that just happens in kind of a heartbeat in the background, making sure, kind of raising its hand every so often saying like, hey, I'm here, I'm still running this schema.
Got it.
Cool. And so our server is back up and running. We can check out the history page. It still hasn't appeared here.
And when it does, I should get a notification, right? Did we set that up?
Well, you should, but it says get notified on changes. So I think the issue that we had a moment ago.
Oh, messed up our...
Yeah. Let's see what's going on here. It says it's going to notifications test now. That's not what we want. We want it to go to Kurt direct. Okay. So you probably won't actually get this change.
We might have to make another, which is fine. We could always like add score back if we end up needing to. There we go.
So here's score. It's been removed, but you didn't get anything for it. So we can just add score back in.
We don't need score. Maybe we want score.
We need it. Well, here. Well, one thing we can do is now that author has been deprecated, we can just remove it. Because we have author name, right? So we'll make that change because it kind of fits with the story we're trying to tell.
Yeah.
And now if I go over here and refresh because playground, and if I ask for author, it should say cannot query field author on type. But cool, it's been removed.
Makes sense.
Author name exists. And we can go over here to see if it's going to appear. I don't know. I wonder how often this page reloads because it feels like I needed to refresh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I guess it's still not here yet. And this is why schema notifications are great because I'm just sitting here in the dark, whereas Kurt knows. He's like, I know it's not there because I've got a message.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm waiting for my Slack notification. I want to feel important.
I guess I could go over to the notifications test channel in the meantime.
Oh yeah. If you want, you could screenshot that and bring that over. I don't think I'm in that channel.
You don't really want to be.
That's a good call. Mute channel.
I am not either.
Oh, I just got a notification. Something just.
Oh.
I just got a knock brush.
Yeah. Look at that.
Oh, it's there. Oh, hang on. Screenshot coming in hot.
Nice. And so this was actually caught as a breaking change because even though the field was deprecated, there were some recent operations in the last 24 hours that
used it. Yeah.
This kind of shows this big red bar here to be like, hey, maybe you messed some stuff up. We're actually also, I might make a return appearance to Mission Briefing in a few weeks to talk about, what we're doing with checks and validation and schema policy as well.
Yes.
That's something we're super, super excited about. Right now, the policy here is any operation that's used within the last 7 days is counted as a breaking change, which is a little strict. We at Apollo, and I'm sure a lot of people here on the stream and a lot of our customers, one of the reasons that they use GraphQL is to move much, much, much quicker. Be able to make changes, and even breaking changes in some case, like one day to the next. And so being able to change that policy and say, actually, in the last 24 hours is okay, or be able to have some kind of like approval process is something we're really interested in making a reality so that you can know that that the changes you're making to your graph are safe by your own measures, not by just a default policy.
I love that. I think that's so vital and important because you're right, because you don't know what anyone's particular use cases are. Like maybe they're okay deprecating something that gets under X amount of hits per day, right? Like they're only looking for things that past a certain threshold of usage, like you mentioned. Yeah, I think that's very clever, and I think it also makes it easier to kind of just involve everyone in a discussion around those policies and like what they should be, and so that's awesome stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And our idea about what Graph Manager is that at a certain scale you need to manage your graph. It's not just
A
a
thing.
server that you're running or a fleet of servers. It is this ecosystem of your evolving API that requires real communication.
Yeah.
And a lot of teams solve this by just having lots and lots of meetings and email chains, and
Yes.
um, that is totally. I mean, at its core, every single problem can be boiled down to like a communication and a collaboration problem. But as much of that as you can offload onto automation, the better, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to do a quick small rant in that, like, I don't think that some people don't grasp the value because even though it's important, no matter how large your graph is, the larger that it gets and the more people that become involved with that graph. And if you're following this, kind of idea of like we have one single graph and that is the source of truth for everything. I mean, you're talking about you have everyone involved in there: QA engineers, product managers, even design. Like when I was at Major League Soccer, a big selling point for me to get GraphQL adoption was the graph itself, and product managers and design team members and QA people being able to just go into something like GraphQL Playground or Graphical and explore and discover and talk about the data and the relationships between it. And so yeah, like having a it's just like you said, it was just endless like meetings and like things like that, and that only gets harder and harder to scale. So
And it's even more than that. I completely agree. Design, product management, engineering, but one of the amazing things about the graph, it's something we've been leveraging as much internally too, is the value of all of your data being in one place
mm,
means it's so much easier to get your finger on the pulse of analytics,
yeah,
to
that's
get
true.
your sales team to start to really understand which customers are having what kind of
Wow.
usage, to be able to
Yeah.
track user analytics in one place, be able to implement caching at the edge in that central gateway hub.
Yeah.
But all of this centrality comes with the cost of being able to make sure that that interface is extremely airtight,
Yeah.
because any single point of failure means that you want to have that single point of failure do have as few responsibilities as possible and be managed as safely as possible,
Absolutely.
and not have to include 6 different teams in a schema change discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and this stuff
Oh,
can be hard,
very hard.
especially when you're dealing with a distributed API. One of the great things about Federation is that, and I'll easily go on many rambles. So like,
No,
tangent, the
let's do
whole
it.
tangent we can go on
This
about
is good.
Federation.
Yeah, I'm super. Yeah, let's do it. Let's lay it out.
But one of the huge, I think Federation makes it much easier to achieve that vision of one graph,
Yeah.
but it also makes it much harder to share this development process across different teams and make sure that the changes you're making are going to be compatible with services that other teams are running. And I think that being
Wow.
able to just track those changes over time and add policy to what changes are okay and what aren't, and even automation of that communication protocol,
Yeah.
right? Like something we don't have today, but I would love to have in the future, is be able to say, okay, we have a number of different clients. This is an example I just set up. So we don't have clients set up right now, but we saw in that example with the Cephi
Yeah.
having the iOS client and the web client, being able to say that those clients have their own notification channel, and being able to say, this is the part of the graph that I care about, and
Yes.
here's my policy,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
and being able to just have that feed into directly just makes this great layer of communication that doesn't require this pre-engagement philosophy of lots of meet and I spend all day in meetings, but that doesn't mean that everyone should.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not saying that meetings are bad. I think meetings can be a great way to
For
like
sure.
learn about the graph and to communicate with a lot of different people. And at the end of the day, you need them. But as much time as you can spend in that meeting focusing on the problem and on the actual conflict and not just on information gathering and sharing, the
Yes.
better.
Oh, absolutely. And that really spoke to me too about that like siloing kind of the pipeline because it's true. Not you might not, especially in a very large graph, that could be like a fire hose at that point, right? And
Right.
so yeah, being able to kind of silo that off and just say I'm concerned with this part or these policies affect this part, I could see that being extremely valuable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing, I just wanted this whole talk about federation and about schema reporting. One thing I do need to mention for the audience is that out of the box, schema reporting does not actually support federation. We
That was
want
going
to
to be my
be
question. I was just about to ask that. Yeah.
We definitely do. So our plans right now are to have schema reporting become the default for Apollo server when you're not running a federated server, and then quickly to enable that to be possible for you to opt into this with federation as well. But we want to be more careful about those changes because we recognize that being able to coordinate changes among your distributed graphs and your dependencies and pulling those in automatically is something that users really want fine-grained control over, and we wanted to give that looser grain control over just tracking what's running, when that doesn't have an effect on your actual runtime. Because for those in the audience who don't know how federation works, um, when your dependency graph gets updated, that actually changes your gateway server on the fly. It goes through a process of recalculating that composition, adding in fields that might be present in its
Huh.
underlying dependencies,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and starting to actually change the way that it plans operations that come in its query planning logic. So because there's that runtime effect, we wanted to be a little bit more careful and offer finer grained control before we expose that functionality. But that's certainly step two, is to be able to make it much easier when you're running a federated set of distributed graphs or distributed implementing services,
Yeah.
able to have them automatically update and those changes propagate to the gateway without needing to have that deep integration into that deployment pipeline that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so once again, I'm going to play the I'm new to Apollo role, and there's two things that we've just talked about, which is federation, one, and then
Mhm.
two, a gateway. Can you maybe dive just a little bit more into like what each of those are, and then yeah, we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so federation is the idea that, and it really comes out of that one graph philosophy
Right.
that Kurt was saying. So at Apollo, one of the principles that we have of what makes GraphQL valuable is the idea that you have one graph. There's one graph that pulls together all of the information around the organization, and that does two things primarily. It deduplicates efforts, so you can share logic, but it creates that centrality, and that centrality is the most important thing.
Yeah.
The discoverability for product managers, for sales engineers, for design to just see what data is there in an interface that explains capabilities clearly makes it so much easier to figure out what you can build and what's going to cost more to build,
Yep.
along with just exploring. But the problem is that, as we all know, one graph might be a great idea, one server becomes incredibly hard to manage at scale.
Yes.
Once you have a couple of people developing that kind of that data well in the background of where all this stuff is coming from, you don't want to have one monolithic thing that fetches all the data from all of its dependencies. You want to be able to separate those out. And so federation is the idea that you can run different implementing services, all of which expose their own GraphQL API that can compose together and be served as a single graph to the end user, so that they don't need to understand the intricacies
Yeah.
of which dependencies behind the scenes are operating. And that's done through an orchestration component called the gateway. And that gateway is a thin kind of proxy that understands which fields and types are available on which underlying implementing services, and reaches out to them for the information that you request and merges it together to give it back to you as the end user.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. That's very clarifying.
For sure. And so a Cephi actually is like this example. And the reason that I didn't use it and set up schema reporting with it is because it is a federated graph. It has 4 different implementing services, one of which I think is the books that we just made, but with some additional stuff in there, similar books and ISBN.
Yeah.
Um,
And that key field I'm
and
seeing, which is the
yes. So one of the key concepts of federation is that any entity that can be shared and extended by other services. So, for instance, a book might have reviews on it. You might want to say this review corresponds to that book. And in order to make that edge of correspondence, you need to have a way to identify or to key into that entity itself. And so keys are very similar to like a primary key in SQL are expected to be that connecting edge to use that identification.
Got it. Yeah, awesome, man. This is so cool. I like like I said, I haven't been in Graph Manager for a good while, and it's just so amazing to see like all that you can do with it now. This is really wild stuff. Like so,
Thanks.
right here, I mean, right here we're looking at essentially, here's 4 graphs that are federated together into a single graph. And not only can we just view it as a single graph, but then we can start to break that down and like look at what the underlying services are. So you can get that outside clean appearance of one graph, but on the flip side to that, as beneficial as that is, there's times where you need to know where things are coming from and where you would want to make changes or updates or figure out what's going on. And so this is really cool. You attach this onto with the metrics and the reporting, which, I understand that with Federation right now is not possible, but still, these are all just like, I don't know, these are really wild features. This is really cool. The Slack integrations, like I could have benefited from that so much, so many times. Just something as simple as that. It seems like, oh, cool. Well, you just pressed a couple buttons and you got Slack notifications, but like those notifications are extremely valuable and time saving. And so this is all really awesome stuff. Thank you so much for coming on and showing us this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about it. I think a lot of the things we talked about are the things that we on the Graph Manager team just think about every single day. How do we make it easier to automate these processes for you to communicate across different teams that have these dependencies? How to make the experience around federation better? So, one example here is in a trace view, being able to see that detailed operation, you can actually see the different implementing services that were reached out to by that gateway and in what order. Just by looking at it, they're all prefixed with like service colon.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even notice that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Which maybe we should make that more noticeable if you didn't notice it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I didn't even really like look down there very much. I was just focused on a bunch of other stuff. But yeah. You could do that for sure. But yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool. So now you know exactly where it's coming from, even from the surface level of metrics. You don't have to dig into the services necessarily. Very cool.
Exactly. And we want to give more and more of that understanding back. And we definitely do want to make schema reporting available for Federation as well. But as I said, we just want to make sure that we're doing it very carefully since it changes that runtime dependency.
For sure. And it makes sense. And so also just to reiterate for anyone, like in case you haven't been with us since the beginning of the stream, that schema reporting is not like, it's not production release. It is beta currently.
That's
definitely
right.
Want you to go try it out. Yeah, preview it and try it out and provide feedback. But yeah, it makes sense not to throw it into Federation until it's something that is ready to be, has been ironed out and is production ready, I guess you could say. Yeah.
One caveat that, so yeah, we're in public preview right now. Anyone can set this up. This is especially simple to set up if you are already running a graph and reporting metrics. All you need to do is add that additional option that we showed in the Apollo server constructor to say experimental schema reporting true. We're planning on making that even easier, and so you could just set an environment variable as well, like Apollo schema reporting equals true.
Got it.
Which we should have in the next day or so.
Yeah. Cool.
Merge that in and release it. This is actually all available in the latest Apollo server 2.14.0.
Okay.
So you don't need to even use a beta release at all. It's just flagged as experimental because if we make some changes to how it works or operates behind the scenes, we just want to make sure that is clear that this is in preview and we might make those changes.
For sure.
I think the one caveat to mention is that when you're making a new graph, this is something that we are also going to make easier to set up right now. But if I say like example new graph 62, because why not 62? Right now, it only gives you a user token to be able to, and now you delete user. It only gives you a user token to be able to do things, whereas you need a service token. So if you want to get that, there is a hack you can do right now, but we're going to add that one into the into that onboarding step. But you can hack around it for a moment, which is something I had to do today, but hopefully no one on this call will have to do tomorrow. And just like go into the settings page and get an API key for that.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense.
In a moment.
Yeah, for sure. So then, real quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna just stop sharing my screen, but I don't know how.
Oh, to stop sharing your screen should just be at the bottom of the Skype window, two like little boxes. Boom. There you go.
Found it.
All right, cool. So let me take this and boop, and then I've got my Explorer up. Yeah, so we're good. So real quick, I just want to talk about, so people won't have to worry about it tomorrow, but I'm still curious. What's the difference between a user key and a service key?
That's a great question. So a user key identifies me, and that I actually just stopped sharing my screen so I could delete that user key that I should, because that has a lot of power.
Oh yeah.
And the main difference is the power it has. User key gives you the ability to do anything that you want in your organization. So my user key has the ability to change our internal graph, or to change the Cepheid graph. And it can actually access multiple different graphs and multiple different organizations.
Because it's the
I have my
user.
personal.
Got it.
Got it. A service key, or maybe more accurately called a graph key, lets you work specifically on that one graph.
Got it.
And usually those are mostly like mutative actions. So being able to update the schema or being able to send metrics in. You can't, as a user, report metrics.
Got it. Got it.
Or though you can, as a user, report a schema using the CLI. So there's some overlap with their permissions. Yeah. Right now, our permission for keys is essentially, as a user, you have access to the things you have access to with your user token. And as a graph, you can only access things on the graph. And there's some set of what those are. We expect to get more granular with those permissions and being able to set actual roles and create your own keys over time. But it's not something that we have, fully fleshed out.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense though. Okay, cool. So I feel like we've covered a lot. I'm just going to do a quick recap. So what we've covered is you can now add schema reporting to your graph, simple, as long as it's not federated currently, because it's experimental, still figuring things out. All that it requires is for you to set the experimental flag to true in Apollo server, and as long as you have a API key, TM, it will just work. It'll start getting your reports, and then you can also, so you don't have to sit there and wait for them to roll in. You can set up notifications. Now I noticed we set up Slack. Is there any other type of notifications that you can get, like email or something like that?
Right now it's just Slack, but we do expect to expand that out. Ideally, actually, in the short term, or in the medium term, more accurately, we'd really love to have like just webhook, generic webhook integration.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that'd be the best. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so that's probably the next thing before, and then after that we'll set up the specific ones people want, whether that be probably email as like the more obvious one. Yeah. I imagine, at least from what I want, I think I'd want an email digest, being like, over the last week these schema changes. Yeah. I don't really want an email every time the schema changes, because it's just gonna clog my inbox.
Yeah. A schema report, if you will.
Oh yeah. And one small correction to your recap, which is not only do you have to add the API key, but you do need to opt into this functionality today by setting that flag on the constructor.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. On the Apollo server, when you create your Apollo server, under the engine property, you set the experimental _ schema reporting flag to true.
That's right. And you don't need to remember all of that, because all that information is in the preview docs, along with way more stuff. For the more nerdy side of the world, just how this stuff works behind the scenes, what that promotion algorithm is that I kind of alluded to earlier, in case anyone is curious. And the other thing is, one thing that I mentioned earlier is we're in public preview. We would love people to try this out. The best way to provide feedback is just open an issue on that repository that
Oh,
Kurt linked to.
cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
And we'll be very responsive to those as anything comes up. We'd love to hear your struggles, successes, anything of that sort.
Awesome. Well, I feel like this is like a really good wrapping up point. We covered a lot here. I know that I'm certainly blown away by this. I hope that everyone else on the stream has enjoyed it as much as I did. Do you have anything else that you want to add, or I mean, we've already talked a little bit about like what's coming up in the future. Is there any like final notes or anything that you want to leave with our guests here?
Um, I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
this has been great. Thank you, Kurt, for leading this. I want to give a huge shout out to the team that actually
Yes.
built all of this,
Yeah.
uh, which is Ran Magin and Josh Sagarin, and there's been help along the way from a number of different people who've pitched in, but those two have really been leading this charge for a while, and I'm just here to not at all take the credit. I want to give that all to them and
Yeah.
just demo what this is,
Yeah, well,
um,
thank you
and
so
how to.
much to the team, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So I just have a couple wrapping up things from my side, really just about what's going on with oh, nice Strokes t-shirt. So you got a compliment on that. And thanks for the walkthrough from Patrick PY. So yeah, we're glad you enjoyed it, Patrick. And again, thank you for sticking with us through this. This has been very fun. Yeah, coming up this week, we've got more. We've got more streams coming up. So tomorrow we've got another episode of Launchpad. So Trevor Blades and myself will continue to build out our job listings tracking app. So that should be fun. Definitely tune in for that. And on Friday, we're going to have another mission briefing with another Apollo core team member. Danielle Mann is going to come on and show us Apollo Studio. So that should be a lot of fun. So yeah, make sure that you all stick around for that. And I mean, with that, that's all I've got. I think we're good here. I think we can wrap this party up. What do you say?
Beautiful. Sounds
Awesome.
great to me. You guys are in for a treat with the next couple of sessions. Those sound exciting.
Oh yeah, they're going to be great. All right, thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next time.
See ya.